this came up this morning, well, last night. There was talk about, obviously, Victoria has gone through and implemented their machete bans recently. Not that it stopped the unfortunate death of two teenagers over the weekend. The state of South Australia has taken an even bigger step, apparently, for banning, well, sale and display of knives at least, and search powers, and they've also declared machetes as prohibited weapons. Again, I, I, I mean, there are clear some machetes have, well, looks like a cookery, but a limited um, everyday use, but there are still places and valid uses and valid reasons for it. Now, Victoria had said, "Oh no, we only gave one approval for ongoing possession of the machete," but it's one makes me wonder whether it's just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic because it's hiding a bigger problem underneath. And if you go look at the Victorian cases, or go look at the Victorian experience and I guess reasons for doing so, there were articles that came out over the last, well, showed up last night, talking about some of the families in the area involved were now sending their kids back to Africa to attend schooling because it was felt safer, a safer environment for them. So if they're able to do that, I'm guessing um, they're not refugees, they're routine migrants then. But the idea that the families are in the position where they feel that is the safer solution is, I guess, mind-boggling. That an Australian state, well, sections of an Australian state have devolved because of crime, basically, and cultural factors, pressure, peer pressure on the kids, um, undue influence, all that sort of stuff, to the point where people feel safer sending their kids back overseas to attend schooling. The One of the parents came out last night or yesterday afternoon saying that the community had buried, in the last 12 months or so, had buried four kids for all roughly the same reasons. And that, I mean, if you're not trying to take action to fix that problem, how much longer does it need to continue? Now, I'm sure the Victorian government and police were saying, no, but we're working on it. Well, they also took action to suppress reporting that was identifying the, I guess, ethnicity of many of the gang members, or the idea that this was not just a generic teen crime issue, that there may actually be cultural factors at play that need to be directly addressed. That with a focused direct addressing, it well would be more cost efficient, but would also maybe uncover the root cause, whether that's something that maybe better support could fix. Maybe there are solutions that can be implemented into systems to help remove those specific issues, or maybe help focus crime intervention and things like that to make sure that those issues don't then blow up to the point someone loses their life. So, yeah, banning machetes isn't going to stop people stabbing each other or chopping each other up, or what happened over the weekend happening again. And sadly, that's, like I said, I think it's performative. And it is a lack of moral courage to directly address what is causing it or what is happening, or to directly address the common factors. Now, if it was observed or discovered that the the gangs were largely of one ethnicity, or that there was perhaps a degree of organised crime that was coming down gangs along certain cultural lines, it's the sort of thing that should be understood and incorporated into the police response, or into and even into the reporting. It's not racist to say that it is a result of things. I mean, that would be like saying when the they went border wars. I think some people call them the border wars. Like when um, early in colonial settlement, when white settlers and farmers and settlers were basically pushing further inland, and we're starting to get into more conflict with local Aboriginal people. It wouldn't be racist to say that it was a conflict between white settlers and local Aboriginal people. If we were to follow Victoria's lead on this, it would have to be there was knife and gun violence between people, when it is the violence is based along cultural lines for a very specific reason, i.e., one group of people displacing another. Well, that's how most tribal takeovers happen. But in this case, or in Victoria's case, I think it's a disservice to the families, to the community involved, to ignore or not talk about or not have it covered, because, well, generally with attention, things start getting resolved. It was good to see, well, sad to see, but good to see in what the parents were saying and the community was saying, that these two kids who sadly died were not part of any gang activity. They were engaged in community sport, they were engaged in various social activities and community programs and things like this. That's a success story. That's what people should be saying. Well, look, it's not a blanket issue. Sadly, they got targeted maybe because of their ethnicity and the fact that there is a gang that may also share that ethnicity. And I mean, I did see something this morning suggesting that it was all because of a meme. Now, it wasn't alleged that the kids who died had posted it, but for whatever reason, they became targeted by the gang. But the success is these kids who could be pigeonholed into the same bucket as the violent gangs, but they're also the success story. They're the ones engaging in the community. They're the ones who have avoided the cycle, sadly, until they become victims of it. But that sort of stuff should be covered and talked about as well. I mean, there's the successes and there's unfortunately some failures. Why are the violent ones missing the successes that everyone else is? Is it an unwillingness to engage? Is it maybe the criminal justice system needs to be harsher on their initial criminal activity? Is this the first criminal activity that they've encountered? I mean, in other states with uh, other youth crime, quite often you get a lot of frequent flyers. Violent youth criminals don't tend to start with murdering other people. There's generally a build-up, and they've usually not frequent flyers, but they've had exposure to the criminal justice system repeatedly by that point. And we say we want rehabilitation as a forefront, so it's not a case of locking everyone up and throwing away the key, but presumably something is failing in that process, because this keeps happening. And taking knives off the street or away from everyday Victorians, I don't think is going to solve anything. If someone's already committed to a path of committing a violent, brutal act, being told, no, you can't have a knife, isn't going to stop them. And besides, the shop bought machetes and big blades and stuff, okay, a bit better quality metal. But all it takes is a piece of cold steel and some time, and you can form your own effective bladed weapon from it. I don't know. I I just think that these sort of blanket weapon bans um, are a problem. And I mean, Australia's firearms surrender program post Port Arthur. Yeah, okay. If you need firearms as a farmer, hunter, or whatever, most of them was like you were still readily able to access suitable weapons to do suitable roles. But removing more of them from the community, I think was probably a safer outcome. It's probably a bit harder to have random knife violence like you do the risk with gun violence. Um, I suppose it depends on where you feel comfortable drawing the line. Quite clearly, there are people who felt the line was overstepped with the whole gun buyback program. Um, Here, I feel like this is maybe a step too far. But you look at the UK, where there's similar sorts of legislation and things like that, hasn't stopped gun or knife violence over there. It yeah. Somebody who has the intent is going to set about it anyway. If they have the motivation to do it, they're going to find the means to do it as well.